Hey Jay, what do you say we talk about some attachment style theory?
Yeah, I'm ready for this one.
Okay. We mentioned this in a past episode, and I said, hey listeners, if you want to talk about this or you want us to talk about this, let us know.
And I was like, I want to talk about it.
Yeah, it was like the episode ended, you were like, no, we're doing it.
Yeah, no, I want to talk about that. I think people will like it. I think it will be helpful.
I do too. And, you know, in the meantime, listeners did ask some questions about it. So we're delivering for the people. But
as always,
also because Jamie said. And then I'm just going to quickly acknowledge that for the first time, we have like a whole video set up so that we can put this on YouTube and on social media.
Yeah.
And so this is a trial run. We both put a lot more effort into our appearance today than we normally do for this. So if you hear like something awkward or we're a little weird today, weirder than usual,
than normal,
we're just trying to adjust to that.
Yeah, we're just, you know,
I think
bear with
within
us.
Like 30 seconds, I'm going to forget it's there.
Agreed.
That's okay.
Yep.
All right. So attachment style theory. This is the way you bond with your primary caregivers as a baby.
Yep.
And how it sets the foundation of how you bond with future relationships.
Correct.
All future relationships.
Yes.
People get stuck on this, and I really only see it talked about in romantic relationships.
Which is weird because I think about it as a parent.
I think about it a lot more as a parent. I don't know if it's because you and I are thinking of it also like, am I giving my kid the attachment that they need?
That's exactly,
so
exactly what I'm doing.
Front of brain.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But it's everywhere. And it's like every relationship you have with anybody, this is present.
Right. And they're different.
Yes. So one of the biggest misconceptions, and we'll get into this more when I'm like describing each one and like talking about that, is that it's like a personality test.
Right.
And like if you get secure attachment style, then that's the attachment style you have all the time with everybody in the world forever and ever.
Right.
Not
but
true.
It's not. Right.
Listen, the whole understanding of human behavior is knowing that different things trigger different results in you and reactions in you.
Right.
And really what healing is and why healing itself is so intuitive is that you're sort of like taking, there's two columns. You're taking all the stuff in the column that's like, I just react.
Yes.
And then you're trying to put more of it in the column of like, I react based on my feelings, my true feelings, not necessarily just to this outside stimuli.
Right.
That's what healing is. I know that doesn't sound like fluffy and pretty and like rainbowy and 4D, whatever it's supposed to feel like.
Yes.
But that's what healing is, and that's what intuition is.
Right, exactly.
And so the more intuitive you are, the more drawn to learning about this stuff so you can put more stuff in that column.
Right, exactly.
I wish I could think of a sexier way to describe it, but like that's what it is.
Well, and I think it's important to know this because I think I'm seeing it a lot more on social media.
Yes.
But of course, you're only getting little hits of like 10 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe a minute.
Yes.
Someone talking about attachment styles.
Right.
So like if you know the basis behind what someone's talking about, you're going to be able to like use it better.
Yeah. And you're going to, like, whatever your attachment style is changeable and healable.
Yes.
So just because you see a lot of like, one of the types is anxious avoidant.
Yes.
Like, let's say you see that a lot in your relationship with your kids.
Yep.
You can do things to make it more of a secure attachment.
Right.
Like, you're not stuck.
It's not like your sun sign where
No,
it's just like you're born with it.
You're stuck with your sun sign.
Right.
This is something that the more from the column to the other column you put, the more healing you do, the more the attachments will feel secure. And it's not so that you can brag about having secure attachment style. I mean, go ahead if you want. It's a weird flex.
Yeah.
But like you and I would probably appreciate it, but I don't know if many other people would be like, oh wow.
Right.
But it's more so that you can feel better in your connections to people.
Exactly.
It's also some cycle breaking stuff.
Absolutely.
See our episodes on that.
Absolutely.
So there you go. Okay. So I thought for this episode, I would start with the creators because I couldn't find anything controversial on them. So I can't like drop a bomb or like really make you question this a lot. Like they're pretty okay.
Legit. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, if we're talking about something a lot in pop culture or regular everyday life. Yes. We want it to be legit.
Yeah, I don't want to find a bad person or someone with some bad things. I know it makes for a good podcast.
Right.
But like, I literally love a lot of these tools. Like, I really truly do.
Yeah, no, I do too.
I feel securely attached to them. And so I want the people to be good people.
Right.
Okay. Do I think they're perfect? No.
Right.
But from what I could find, I couldn't find a lot of people doing anything except maybe disagreeing with a theory.
Good.
That's fine with me.
Good, we'd like that.
Okay. So there is a father, Jamie.
There's always a father. Father of attachment style theory.
Yes. So it's a British psychologist and psychoanalyst.
Okay.
Named John Bowlby. It's spelled Bowlby.
Okay.
And he came about, I was going to say discovering this theory, but I think creating this theory would be the best way to say it, in the 1950s.
Okay.
Then somebody named Mary Ainsworth, who's a psychologist herself, came around. She worked with him and then promoted it further into like the 60s and the 70s. She did a lot of the work. And sort of the two of them are credited with it.
Okay.
What I find to be so interesting, and this is just a question I don't necessarily know the answer to, like I can give you some theories if you want, is so much of what we talk about that's like popular in pop culture right now that has to do with psychology is from so long ago.
That's a really good point.
It's like why are we like really getting into this now? Because 10 years ago, nobody would have be able to tell you what attachment style was.
That's true.
But a lot of people do. So I just think that's really interesting to me.
Is it an issue of access? That now we have like the internet where we can talk about things and share information?
I think that would make sense.
Yeah.
I think my theory kind of goes to crediting like the generation below us.
Oh, definitely.
With really trying to explore and excavate mental health and bring a lot of stuff to the surface.
Absolutely.
So I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things, but I just feel like there's so many times where I'm going like, hey, this thing from 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago, 80 years ago is now what we're talking about.
Right.
And there really wasn't a time in between there that people other than psychologists were probably learning about this.
I don't think people would have even been open to talking about it.
No, it wouldn't have been like
outside of like a psychologist's office.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been something that interested people. I mean, it would have interested you and I, for the most part.
I mean, obviously there's always like a portion of the population that wants to do this work, right? But not like today.
Exactly. Okay, so Mary Ainsworth, who I mentioned, she came up with something called the strange situation, and she did something called the strange situation research.
Okay.
Really interesting. I've also heard it referred to as the stranger situation.
Okay.
Either way, it's the same thing. And this is when a really young child, like most of this research gets done in the first year of life for a kid. That's where they're really focusing their attachment style theory. I think there should be another age about it too, but we'll talk about that later. So what they do is they have a stranger come in the room with a kid. So there's I'm going to say a baby, but it could be a toddler also.
Okay.
There's a baby in the room and they're with their primary caregiver. In all of the videos I saw of this experiment and all of the research I was reading, it was always a mother.
Okay.
But all of the wording is always to say caregiver. So I'm just...
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because of when it was created.
I think it has a lot to do with that.
Okay.
I also think that possibly because there is a very strong biological bond between mother and child, carrying the baby, that like there's all these studies, right, about how, mothers know like the cry, or you wake up in the middle of the night knowing they have a fever. Like there's a different level of attachment. That's not to say that there's not wonderful dads. There's just like some other element present with a mother and a child that I think that's why they focus on it. Okay. But to your point, I couldn't help but think when I was reading this that it was like almost all of the blame was also being put on the mother a bit.
Yeah, I mean, in the 50s, you wouldn't even, I don't think, even consider that it would be the father doing the primary caretaking.
Right.
Unless there were extenuating circumstances.
Right.
Right.
Right. I mean, I think about how your situation growing up was, at least by you, was viewed as very unique. being raised by a single dad.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think I think there's a lot of these elements present. Mm-hmm. And one thing that I looked for was research on the father's role in this.
Right.
How does this affect all of this?
Right.
Because what if you didn't, you had a different kind of bond with your mother, but a different one with your father, and like, where does that play in? I couldn't find a lot of research about it. However, I do feel like I hear a lot more conversation about that now.
It has to play in.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it has to.
I was just watching something about how even just the way we say, like, children of incarcerated people, we just kind of call them fatherless. But like, we don't look at how like incarcerating people are making them father. Like,
exactly.
We don't quite have it right yet in that department. Is my point. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this experiment is the baby is with their mother, and a stranger walks into the room.
Okay.
They are measuring what the baby is doing.
Okay.
Okay. So there's all different things to this. Like, sometimes the baby is close to the mother. Sometimes the baby is further away from the mother. Sometimes they're playing. Sometimes they're not. Okay. And then they repeat the experiment without the mother in the room, or having the mother leave the room.
Okay.
And to see what the baby does.
Okay.
And this is how they really took John Bowlby's work and sort of like put it in a scenario where they could really see it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So a little bit about Bowlby before we get way into the attachment styles here.
Okay.
He was raised by parents. Now, again, remember the timing of this. He's doing this work in the 50s. So he's growing up in like the 30s and 40s, right?
Easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he was raised by parents who thought that too much affection and attention would spoil a child.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes. I remember my mother saying that her parents felt that way.
Yep.
Too much praise, too much attention, too much like emotional connection. That was too much.
Yep.
Okay. So John Bowlby was also sent to boarding school at age 7. So these things are things that he felt had this really big influence on him.
Yeah.
So he went on later, to become a really accredited and well-known psychologist.
Right.
And he went on to work with a lot of children, especially homeless and delinquent children.
Okay.
Now, when I wrote down the term delinquent children, I like hated it.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at the research, that's the term they're using.
Okay.
And it really they're just referring to any kid that got in trouble with the law.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if that is like a term that feels offensive to people, but that's what is in the research. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I had a little bit of a squidgy moment when I read that.
No, when you said it, I did too. I mean, you could say like court involved, or there are a lot of words you can use.
I'm sure there's a better way to say that. Mm-hmm. That's how it's referred to in the research.
Okay.
He did lots of volunteer work. He worked as a psychoanalyst in World War II for the Royal Army.
Okay.
And he was also the mental health consultant for WHO, the World Health Organization.
Oh, wow.
And I would also like to add that at the time, his work was controversial.
I bet it was. Because
people felt like how his parents felt.
Exactly.
That too much attention, too much praise, too much affection would spoil a child and do something bad for them.
Or like, why are we even talking about like people's feelings and like their emotions? Like that was a stretch for them.
A big stretch.
Yeah.
So when I was researching, of course, as soon as I go in and I see like there's a white man here, I'm immediately suspicious.
Yeah.
But then when I was really looking, and like I also try to think, like look at the time period. I look at what the criticism is of the man, of the stuff. And it really made me feel like, oh, this was a guy who was doing this work. He was not getting a lot of praise. This was not easy.
Right.
Like this was work. Like he was actually in the field trying to help people, and he wasn't getting, like, I don't think this man died knowing that he helped or like was going to be a popular TikTok trend. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he was working against the tide.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. Okay. So the addition of saying like the attachment style has like the main categories, there are 4 main categories, was something that Mary Ainsworth added based on a lot of her research with the Stranger Project. Okay. So there are 2 main attachment styles, and one of them has 3 subcategories.
Okay.
One of them has no subcategories.
Okay.
Interesting, right?
Yes.
Okay. So there are secure attachment and insecure attachment.
And secure has no subcategories.
Secure has no subcategories.
Okay.
Insecure has 3 subcategories.
Okay.
Different places where you look will call the categories different things just to be confusing.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's great. I'm going to try to mention all of them. Okay. And I'm also going to try to be as succinct as I can about not being confusing at the same time.
Gotcha.
Because the way this is presented in videos I'm watching, in things that I'm reading, is very confusing.
Okay.
Like, they jump around a lot. And I think the reason is that these aren't hard and fast things.
Right.
These are also kind of spectrums.
Yes.
And based on the situation you're in and how safe you feel and how long you've been in a relationship and what's being triggered in that relationship, what you're working on healing, like the shit you're healing in a romantic relationship is different than the shit you're healing when you're parenting.
That's a really good point.
It's different than the shit you're healing with your friend. Like,
correct. Or your own parents or your siblings.
It's different. Like when I was reading about the attachment styles and I was reading mine, it was really sticking out to me that like that is not, none of this stuff is present until I really feel safe with somebody.
Interesting.
So like I'm not attaching to a stranger like this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I would actually categorize myself completely in a different category for strangers and then bring myself into this category with people I feel really comfortable with. So my point is that there are not hard and fast rules here, and you can't just take the label and go, oh, that's my label everywhere.
Well, and that's why it gets dicey, because when you're watching, again, like a 30-second TikTok, you can't explain the nuance of all of this.
It's also less fun.
Yeah, of course.
It's way more fun to just be in the category.
Of course.
It's way more work and confusing and like harder to explain and harder to analyze in yourself when it's different everywhere.
Well, and I think there's also the, like, I think humans really like to find, we've talked about how they like to categorize themselves, right? We love a label, we love a box.
Yes.
Right?
Our brains are designed to do that.
To find that, find where you fit in, right?
Exactly.
But then it's also a good excuse.
It really is.
Like if you don't really want to do the work, or if you don't actually want to look into this just feels like something like cool to learn about really quickly.
Yeah.
Then I feel like it's probably pretty easy to be like, well, I have an anxious attachment. Like, oh, that's why I ruined that last relationship.
I mean, I see people do that. I see people do that with astrology too.
Exactly.
Oh, it's just my, it's my Libra moon. Like no, that's not an excuse for you not trying,
destroying relationships
or having shitty behavior.
Exactly.
Like it may be a factor that if you understood could help you.
Right, and that's playing into the situation.
Absolutely. So I think the best way to look at these attachment styles when I explain them is to go, I have all of these. But my main one, based on my experience as a child, is this. Like, I have a default one.
I lean towards this one.
Yes.
Right.
But it doesn't always happen. And if, let's say you are, like, for me, spoiler alert, I have a secure attachment style. Okay.
Not a spoiler.
Okay. Not a spoiler. No one was surprised by that information, especially you. Okay. So I have a secure attachment style. So it would be really easy for me to go, well, I don't need to worry about this because I have secure. I'm not in the insecure category.
I don't have to look at this.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm above this.
I'm good.
I'm way better than all of those people. Not true.
Correct.
Because as I'm going through, I'm like, ooh, that particular one shows up here.
Right.
That particular one shows up there. And I had parents who did the things that you'll hear to create secure attachment. So again, it's not just like, okay, you've been awarded secure attachment. Congratulations.
Right.
Like there's so much more.
Gotcha.
Again, it makes it a little less sexy.
Yeah.
But
here we are.
Psychology is complicated.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to just give you I'm going to tell you real quick what they are. And then I think we should take a break and I'll come back and break them down.
Okay.
But I put a graphic on my paper.
You did.
Which really only you can see. And even if I held it up to the camera.
You would never see it.
No. Okay. But I think this is helpful. So I'm going to just try to explain it. The attachment styles are secure, avoidant, fearful avoidant, and anxious.
Yep.
Okay. Now, the way it is in this graphic is like It's like a square. It almost looks like a
They're
graph.
like two axes, like
Two axes,
right?
Yes, exactly. And there's avoidant on the top, secure on the bottom. That's on the left side. And then on the right side, we'll post this on social media too for people.
Right.
There's fearful, avoidant on the top, and then anxious on the bottom.
Yep.
And then you can see in these other letters that like across the middle, like if it was the equator.
Yeah, the first axis.
Yeah. Says low anxiety to the left side, high anxiety to the right side, high avoidance on the top, low avoidance on the bottom.
Gotcha.
Okay, this is confusing.
Now I know why I am the way I am.
You just got to have a light bulb moment.
I see what you're doing. Okay. All right. It's all making sense now.
So you fall on this axis somewhere.
Yep.
You don't necessarily go, I'm just in the secure box. You might be in like the avoidant box dialed more towards avoidance or
Right.
less towards avoidance or towards more like fearful avoidant or more towards anxious, even if you're in the secure box. Like,
Well, that's why it's a spectrum. Like when you see this, like when we put this on social media or if you
Yes.
Google it yourself,
Yes.
which you could easily do,
yes.
you'll see why it's a spectrum. Like you're going to be in different spots.
Yes.
on
And different things are going to pull you to different areas.
Or different people.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So we're going to take a quick break and then
Yep.
I'm going to come back, break this down, explain all of
into it.
these things, let
Yep.
you know like what creates them, what causes them, like where they show up and what they look like.
Yep.
And then we'll be back.
Awesome. All right, Heather, this week, I'm obsessed with a TikTok that you sent me.
Awesome. I'm obsessed with any TikTok I have sent to you. so
Exactly. So I figured you'd be on board.
Fair game. Yep.
But it's this woman talking about this campaign called Correct the Internet
Yes.
and how basically they're saying that the algorithm of the internet
Yep.
has learned misogyny.
Yeah. Like
I'm assuming.
search engines.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So the example on this TikTok, which we can post, it
Yeah.
was saying that someone searched for like the highest scoring soccer player.
Yes.
And the answer came up
They wrote, who's the highest scoring soccer player
of all time.
of all time? Not male soccer
No,
player.
right. No, it's just soccer player.
Yeah.
And the answer came up as Ronaldo.
Cristiano Ronaldo.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not a sports guy. I don't know.
Wait,
That guy.
You're not a sports guy? Yeah, but you know who that. You've
No,
heard
I
his
do.
name
I
before.
absolutely have heard of
Yeah,
him.
Right.
But that's inaccurate.
It's not correct.
It's a woman who's the highest leading scorer
Yes.
of all time.
Yes.
And-
but she doesn't come up on the search
No,
engine.
like nowhere. And so
No.
only when you add in, like you have to change the wording to like
to say female.
female
Yeah.
leading scorer, then you get her name.
But she scored more than the male.
Right.
Like, that's so effing problematic.
Like the machines know.
Oh, it's like, it really, I don't know how much of it is like learned algorithm by the search engine and how much is programmed, but
True.
I can't figure out which one makes me more mad, to be honest. Like, do you know what I mean?
One
Like,
makes me mad and one makes me like sad/scared.
yeah. Fair.
You know what I
Fair.
mean?
Yes.
And like, and if it's learned misogyny, then it's obviously learned white supremacy and transphobia and like it's learned all of it.
And, you know, we've talked about this before because I get spicy about this, but like women's sports should be equally as popular as men's,
Correct.
if not more
Right.
popular than
Right.
men's, to be honest. Right. And it's because they're kept from being that
Actively.
actively. And
Right.
people will be like, oh, but no one's going to watch that. People don't want to watch that. And I'm like, people are dumb. Sorry, they are. And they will watch what's on.
They'll watch what they're told to watch.
And they'll watch what's promoted, and
Right.
they'll watch what's advertised, and they'll
Exactly.
watch what has the sponsors and what has the big flashy events with the singers and
Paparazzi
the dancers.
and- right,
the, yeah,
exactly.
That's what they'll do.
But we refuse to invest in women.
Oh, it really drives me crazy.
Yeah, agreed.
Because I can't believe that I became an adult and it still didn't get better or enough better.
No.
Like, I remember this problem, not with search engines because we're too old for that.
True.
But I remember the same problem.
Right.
in life.
Exactly.
As a kid growing up and being like, that's going to change. We're going to change that.
And it hasn't.
And I'm just like, we haven't changed.
We're
much
still
of that.
here.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's become a bigger problem because this, like, these machines, this internet that we all live off of
Yeah.
is now biased in the same way. So, I mean, again, Debbie Downer.
It's infuriating. But Debbie Downer, but let's spin it in a positive way.
Right.
If you know it,
Correct.
it doesn't hold any power.
Right.
And you can keep pointing it out. And you can keep complaining about it.
Right.
And you can keep making
Talking about it.
social media posts
Yep.
about it and bringing it up until it forces people to fix it.
Fix it.
Yeah.
It certainly is fixable.
It's so fixable.
Yep.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Exactly.
All right, let's break these attachment styles down a bit.
Okay.
Let's start with secure attachment.
Okay.
Remember, there's secure and insecure.
Right.
Insecure has the subcategories.
Yes.
And we're on this axis.
We are. We are.
Pull over if you're driving and Google the picture.
Right.
Or go to our social media. It's probably in our stories.
Yeah.
Hopefully we remember.
No, it'll be there. Or just, you might beat us to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So look at that so that this helps you. But secure attachment, here's how it kind of shows up.
Okay.
All right. The ability to regulate your emotions,
That's a good one.
otherwise known as emotional intelligence.
Yes.
So again, I think emotional intelligence, you're born with a range.
Yes.
You can increase it.
Yep.
And you can do nothing and stay at the bottom of it.
Right.
So this would be, so just because you have secure attachment style doesn't mean you're an emotional intelligence like genius.
Right.
But you probably have a higher level of it, at least in your range,
Okay.
if you have secure attachment. Does
Okay.
that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, because there are other things. There are people probably listening right now and thinking, I had a great childhood or I had
Yeah.
a great relationship, but I'm autistic or I have ADHD. And so it's naturally harder for me to regulate my emotions.
There's so many other
For a
factors.
different reason.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So that plays into it, but it's not going to absolutely bar you from being securely attached.
Excellent point.
You know what I mean?
Excellent point. This
Okay.
is not like a standalone, like, oh, you're emotionally intelligent, you must be, have secure attachment.
Right.
Oh, you had secure attachment, you must be able to regulate your emotions easily. Like,
Right.
no.
Right.
But this is part of that.
Gotcha.
Yes. So easily trusting others.
Okay.
This is where, as somebody with secure attachment style, I'm going to really say, like, not until you're in my circle. Otherwise, I don't trust anybody. And I think you'll be able to say by the end of this, which style I am before I really know somebody.
Okay.
I'm not going to reveal it yet.
Right.
I want to see if you crack the code.
Okay.
Effective communication skills. Mm-hmm. Ability to seek emotional support.
Okay.
Interesting one for me.
Yeah.
Just so many factors on that
Yeah.
one.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you just have some, like all humans, we have sort of prerequisites that you have to hit,
Yes.
right? Before I can be attached to you or be bonded to you.
Yeah.
You have to hit some marks that make me feel safe.
Exactly. I would also like to say, I think if we look at this, like, these things are easier for you to develop.
Right.
Not just that you
You're
automatically.
pro at all of them.
So it's easier
Right.
for you as it's easier for me as a person to seek emotional support, develop effective communicating skills, trust people, because I had secure attachment style.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I will, but it means it's easier. It's not almost, it is like a privilege.
Yep.
It's like starting the race further along.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like an advantage.
Yes. Whereas if you weren't raised in an environment that gave you that,
Yep.
these things are automatically harder. You're running the race with weights around your ankles, and I
Gotcha.
don't have them. I have the newest, fanciest sneakers.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Okay. So comfortable being alone, comfortable in close relationships, ability to self-reflect in partnerships, being easy to connect with, ability to manage conflict well, high self-esteem, and the ability to be emotionally available.
I feel like I hit a lot of those.
I think you do. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree. Okay. So, secure attachment style is something that happens when your emotional needs are very consistently met by your mother.
Okay.
Again, I know I'm only going to say mother.
It can be father. It can be
Yes.
caretaker.
But the studies are only
saying mother.
done on
Yep.
mothers. Okay. You use your mother as a safe base to explore your environment.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So when your kid is being a beast, but like they were so nice and good to everybody else, and as soon as they're alone with you, you're like, who is this?
Horrific.
Yeah.
Right.
That's probably a real indicator that they have secure attachment style to you. You know what I mean?
Because they can be themselves. They can.
Yeah, because you are their safe space.
Right.
So if they have some big emotional reaction that needs to come out of them, if they go to you to have it, that's because you're their safe place. That's the place where I can do this and be safe.
Exactly.
Right? Makes sense. Okay. They're moderately distressed in that stranger project when their mother leaves the room. Moderately distressed.
Okay.
Now think about this for a second. If your mother, who you need to survive, leaves the room and you're only moderately distressed, why is that?
Right.
You believe she's going to come back in.
Yeah, you trust that you're safe and that she's coming back.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's been repeated enough times that when she walks out of the room, she walks back in, that I'm only moderately distressed by it. Making sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. They seek contact when the mother returns.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So she's left and she's come back. They go right over to her to seek contact.
Right.
Okay. What I want to say before I go any further is that none of this is meant to shame any parent.
No.
Because parenting is really, really fucking hard. And there's so many factors that could, like, someone could get sick. There's so many things.
Yep.
Please don't hear it if I know, because again, we have intuitive empathic listeners.
We do.
I understand the filters they're going to run this information through. And absolutely. I don't want you to start beating yourself up.
No, please don't.
It's not worth it.
No, it's not.
It's just to help you understand stuff. That's it.
Right. And like we said, these things can all be healed.
All of them.
Right.
Yes. All healable.
Right.
Okay. So in 1980, there was a study to see how many adults have this attachment style, and it was 56%.
Okay.
That was the most recent study I could find that looked like a legit study to me.
Okay.
That seems high to me.
Right.
For 1980.
Yeah, for the 80s, it seems really high, actually.
That's what I thought. But the way this was being tested was like people were being asked, like, it was almost like a quiz.
Right.
And I'm not really sure how fully objective you could be about yourself.
True.
And I'm not, like, I took a few quizzes online and I was like, I'm not even using these because they were too objective. And like, I don't remember that time.
Right.
And I'm saying how I think I am, where like, what the person who should be taking this quiz about me should be the people who are closest to me, not me.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And they were so wildly different that I was like, none of this applies.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So keep that in your mind.
Okay.
So the next one, now we go into the insecure attachment styles.
Okay.
So the next one on my list is avoidant attachment. Now, if I bring my chart back for you to look at, Jamie.
Yep.
There's anxious avoidance and there's dismissive, otherwise known as fearful avoidance.
Yes.
Fearful or dismissive avoidance, also called disorganized avoidance, are all the same.
Okay. Got it.
I think dismissive, personally, makes more sense for that title, but we'll get to that. You can let me know what you think.
All right.
Okay. So avoidant attachment, which is both anxious avoidant and dismissive avoidant. I'll describe the difference for you. Okay. This is what it kind of looks like. You are left to fend for yourself.
Okay.
Expected to be independent. Reprimanded for depending on a parent. Like the parent would reprimand you or the caregiver for depending on them too much.
Gotcha.
Rejected when you were expressing your needs or emotions.
Sounds like the 80s.
It
just sounds like the 70s and 80s.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you hear rejected when you were expressing your needs or emotions, it doesn't mean that you were necessarily like shot down or told to go away, but that you felt rejected based on the response.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. Slow. So your caregivers were slow to respond to your basic needs.
Okay.
Avoidant attachment people have a very strong fear of abandonment.
Okay.
emotional hunger. They experience something called emotional hunger.
Interesting.
When I tell you that I fell into a rabbit hole researching, because as soon as I heard emotional hunger, something in my whole body was like,
Yeah.
those two terms together
There's
are
something
causing
there.
some kind of like reaction. It's like a chemical reaction for me when I heard that.
Yep.
I tried to be like, let's talk about it on the podcast. I was like, this is
You got to dive in.
it's its own episode. Or like literally just the term hunger in general. I think we could do an episode on like the way humans hunger.
Yes. And how we've sort of twisted the definition of hunger.
It reminds me of what we did to desire.
Yes.
Okay, we did it to
Yes.
hunger. And if you think it's an accident that both of those words are
No,
misused, you're
that's
sadly
not an
mistaken.
accident.
Okay.
Yep.
But emotional hunger is like literally hungering for emotional connection.
Oof.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Clingy. And then they're highly sensitive to criticism, real criticism or perceived criticism.
Okay.
Okay. You're doing a little smirk. Are you identifying with some of this?
Yeah, I'm definitely identifying with some of that. But I think, again, not to be like a pain, but a lot of these can also be explained by other things.
Exactly right.
You know?
Exactly right. Okay. So the interesting thing to me when I was looking at like what causes avoidant attachment, what causes this kind of insecure element of attachment, it was the word neglect.
Yes.
But so at first you think of it like, oh my God, a neglected child.
Right.
Okay. But then when you start to dive into the research and the real nitty gritty, some of the neglect is so slight.
Yep.
So you really have to change the word. Like there are definitely cases of outright neglect.
Right.
That cause this stuff. Yes. But a lot of it when I was researching neglect in like coming from a single parent.
Yep.
But the single parent is very present.
It's not intentional.
It's just all that they have the ability to give.
Correct.
Because they're doing all of the things. Like,
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So I just don't want anyone to hear it as like bad parenting.
Well, and I also think that you hear neglect and you think that person must be awful and like intentionally doing it, like you said.
Yeah.
There's extenuating circumstances, but also, again, back to the 70s and the 80s, you know, that this sort of like discourse between the boomer generation
Yep.
and Gen X and elder millennials.
Yeah.
It's like there's an entire like societal approach
Yeah.
that boomers took to raising kids,
Yeah.
where like I think a mass generation of humans
Yeah.
were neglected,
Yeah.
but all of us were. Like I think that was the approach.
Yes. It wasn't like, let me just not worry about parenting.
Right.
It was just the way you thought you were supposed to parent.
Yes.
And I say this a lot, but it's something that like really blows my mind, but helps perspective in meaning like our parents' generation.
Yep.
Meaning, so like you were born in the late
The greatest
70s.
generation, right.
I was born in the early 80s. I just tried to make myself younger there. Did you see that? Our parents, our grandparents,
Yep.
were really the first generation to have any semblance of a childhood.
Right.
Our parents were really the first generation to have an actual childhood.
Right.
So then you get to us.
And they didn't know how to do it.
And everything that they're doing is so dramatically more than the generation before.
Right.
And the same with our generation.
Right.
But you have to sort of take out judging people based on the current time period. And
Right.
what we know now and what the trends are now. And like the generation we're raising now of like, you know, rainbows and crystals. See our
Right.
episode on that if you
Right.
want. Like that is completely different. And everyone gets like a little smarter about it.
Right. But I think we as Gen Xers,
Yeah.
I'm like right on the cusp of those two.
Me too. I don't even fit into a generation.
Yeah, I'm in that Zennial
Exactly. That's
block. But like a lot of us, we sort of like used to brag about
yeah.
how like we're so tough
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But now we're starting to unpack it and look at it and be like, I mean, I see so much of that on social media.
Yeah.
People my age and a little bit older
Yeah.
starting to unpack like,
Yeah.
no, we should have been allowed in the house for lunch.
Yeah.
No, we should have been
Yeah.
able to like go in and get a drink of water
Yeah.
and not drink from the garden hose.
Yeah. Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I think it's interesting for me because I've had the parents that let you in.
Exactly.
Like I was always
too.
outside,
I
but
did
like
too.
I was the house that everyone in the
Yes.
area would go to, and my
Right.
mother would make all of them lunch. So like, it's almost like a like slightly skewed perspective, but like I knew, and like I think you did, like I had more than them.
Yep.
I knew
Right.
I had some great advantage
Right.
going here,
Right.
and they didn't have that.
And I agree with you.
Yeah.
But I'm only dragging us down this like 70s and 80s wormhole.
Yeah.
Because I think when you look in this, I think you might not even think that you were neglected.
Yes.
But your brain may have been perceiving some neglect.
100%.
You know?
Because you were, like, if you think of neglect as just like some lack,
Yes. Yes.
you're not really getting all the needs met that you
Yes.
needed to develop.
Right.
And you don't think of neglect as like, I, left my baby alone for 6 months or something.
Exactly.
Like, it helps you understand.
Agreed.
This.
Agreed.
Okay. Even so much that like some of the things that were listed as causing these avoidant attachment styles were having parents place a real significant amount of importance on grades, chores, and manners, and feelings being less important than that.
Wow.
That was categorized in the neglect that causes this.
Wow.
Tell me a parent
No.
in the 80s
No.
that had that list the other way.
None.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's there no matter what.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's not always because like you only have one parent or your parent left or in your
Gotcha.
case your parent passed away. There's
Yep.
so much else going on here, and there's so many little fine things, like fine little hair triggers that like
Right.
alter things the other way.
And how does that present? If I have that avoidant attachment,
Yeah.
How am I? Are we doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me just also say that children adopt a strong sense of independence so they don't have to rely on anyone else. And that physical or psychological abuse or early separation from a caregiver cause this in more of an extreme way. But there are many things that cause this in much of a smaller way, where you mostly have a secure attachment, but there's some anxious avoidant happening, or there's a little bit of this. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Again, why this is less sexy, but like
Right.
how it really is in real life.
Yeah, because I thought I was a different attachment.
Yeah. Okay. So let me tell you about anxious avoidant.
But I'm this. With some people.
So they experience high anxiety around the thought of living without their partner.
Okay. Tracks. Can't confirm.
Negative self-image, but positive view of others.
Okay. Yep.
They see their partner as their better half.
No.
I like that you're personally checking.
We're
them.
equals.
No.
We're equals.
When somebody says, "This is my better half," and they're not older than 60, I find that to be a red flag.
Agreed. Agreed.
I'm like, what? Why are you a half? I understand that in
Yeah.
a different generation. I understand that compliment, and that's
Agreed.
not. I'm not like gonna go correct an old man.
I can see an old man walking into a party and being
is
like, "This
my
is my better half." That I get.
You know what I really like when they do is when they say, "This is my bride."
Oh yeah.
I
yeah,
really
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
Yep.
Okay, sorry. Side note. Okay. They seek approval, support, and responsiveness from their partner.
Okay.
They worry their partner is not as interested in them as they are.
Okay.
Now, this is written in the sense of like a romantic
I was
relationship.
gonna say this sounds very romantical.
But if you sort of shift it
Mm-hmm.
to think like high anxiety around the thought of living without their child, their friend, their coworker, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
negative self-image of themselves, but like see all the positive in these people around them,
Gotcha.
not just your partner. Okay,
Yeah.
they see like if they're like with their kid, they think the kid is the best version of them, like they're the better expression of them.
Yep.
They seek approval from other people and like really like the responsiveness and like how they support them. Like they're always just like running checks on that.
Gotcha.
Now, the more emotionally intelligent they are, the sneakier they are about that.
Yep.
Okay. and then worrying the other person doesn't like them as much as they like them. Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I think that tracks in a lot of other relationships too, and actually might be easier to gauge in other connections than a romantic one.
I see that in a lot of parents.
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. So for them in the stranger situation, the babies were focused on staying in close proximity to the mother, but couldn't derive a lot of comfort from her.
Okay.
That
Okay.
felt rough for me.
To hear. Yeah.
Yes.
That's a lot.
Now, I think that the experiment was being done probably on kids that like had an extreme version of the neglect.
Yeah, like a real trauma.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I do think of, if I can use your life as an example for the podcast benefit.
Sure.
I do think of how kids in a situation like yours, where a parent dies
Yep.
in this time frame of like the year, and the sudden loss of that person, or that person being ill in that time,
Right.
and not being able to give them what they need, that these things are going to come out. Now, you also had a father who was very present giving you these things.
Right.
So it makes sense to me that you're going to connect a lot with secure attachment and then some of these things, because
Yeah.
you're going to have formed both.
I think I like oscillated between both.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah. I think I adapted. Like I had one and then I had to adapt.
Exactly.
And then I was able to grow a more secure attachment.
But don't you think that makes a ton of sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, now we have avoidant dismissive.
This one I'm interested in.
Okay. This one I find very interesting too.
Tell me more.
Okay. These are the lone wolves.
Oh.
They are self-sufficient emotionally and will tell you that. Oh, I can meet my own emotional needs. Thank
Okay. Okay.
you. They have a positive view of themselves, but a negative view of others.
Interesting.
Don't you think?
Yes.
Okay. They avoid emotional closeness,
Yep.
hide or suppress their feelings, don't need relationships to feel comfortable.
Okay.
I want you to think of, I see this particularly more in men play out, and there's definitely a societal element to it.
Yes.
Of the men who are like, no, I don't actually ever want to get married.
Right.
Like maybe they do later in life, but they were like, no, I don't actually need a partner.
Yep.
Do you know what I mean? Like I see that.
A lot.
Yep. They are the class clowns. And they do that to get reinforcement, even negative,
Yep.
from adults, because they need the reinforcement. They're not getting it.
Gotcha.
They are sometimes misdiagnosed with ADHD,
Interesting.
but they don't actually have ADHD. It's just that their
Detached.
attachment style is so dismissive that
Wow.
it appears that way.
Interesting.
In the stranger experiment, they became distressed, angry, and had temper tantrums when separated from their caregiver.
Oh.
And the caregiver was consistently unavailable or unresponsive to the child's needs. Like if your parent was consistently not responding, consistently not
Right.
showing up, consistently pushing you away, like that causes this.
So they just turn off.
So they become very dismissive,
Yeah.
and they just completely become self-sufficient.
Gotcha.
Now, what I would like to say is this is the way I think, for the most part, subtly, I behave when I just meet people.
Wait a minute. Really?
Yes. I am
Yes.
really
Okay.
only assessing you.
True.
I'm really not... If
You are turned off a little bit. Like you're observing.
Yes, and I'm not... I don't think you can tell, because I think that I'm skilled
Polite.
in this area.
Yeah, you're polite and kind.
But I'm also like genuinely curious about people, and so they're not really clocking that I'm not sharing.
Good point.
I think I have a black belt in that, to be honest.
Agreed.
I can even deflect. I can deflect.
I
You
can
go
too.
in,
Yep.
yes, and just like spin it back to you so fast that you don't even know what happened.
We're not exactly. We're not talking about me today or ever.
Oh yeah, I did that, but let's talk more about
Yes.
that. What really interests me is like, and we just sort of do it automatically.
Yeah.
So when I'm first meeting people, like when I was reading through this, before I really like looked at this attachment style, I
Interesting.
was like, I am just very much like, I want to study you before I bring you in.
Right.
And I don't necessarily, like, I don't fit having an unresponsive, unavailable caregiver. Like, none of that happened.
No.
But what I think is interesting is that somewhere later in my life,
Yes.
I developed the need to do this. And this is what I'm saying isn't studied.
Or maybe a little bit later, your caretaker was unavailable.
Yeah,
Due
because
to
they were
medical issues.
Exactly.
Right.
But and
Right.
again, I say this all the time, that like the ego and like your intuition and like how your ego's developing is so strong at age 6.
Yes.
That I really do think some research on what's going on in your life at 6 and how that affects your attachment style is going to tell you something.
But couldn't even something like really awful happen when you're 26?
Yes.
And you just completely
course.
like switch to this lone wolf, right? Because
Yes.
something so bad happened.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. I think what you're looking at is what your default is. And you've got to remember that. Like, my default is a secure attachment style. Like, I'm tripping the system and protecting myself by entering into the avoidant.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because I don't think people think this about me. I know you know this about me, but I think people would be really surprised who know me to know that I am the most sensitive person that you'll ever meet.
True.
Everything affects me emotionally. That
Yes.
everybody does all the time.
No, people think that, I don't know that people think that you're insensitive, but I think they just assume that you can manage it, that you're good.
Yes. Or that I'm just not affected by it or something.
Right, that you know how to manage it, you have the tools to manage it, you don't need help with it.
Which is true
Right.
for the most part.
Yeah.
But I don't think...
Doesn't mean you need to do it alone.
No, but I don't think that they know how much that is a act of self-preservation,
Yes.
and not just who
Defense mechanism.
Yes.
Right, a coping skill.
I am. Yes.
Right.
So I also think it's important to bring this up because you might be secure attachment in every area of your life, and then in every romantic relationship you fly into this lone wolf one. You fly into the anxious one,
right,
because of something else that happened to you.
Right.
So it's really interesting to me that there's like, I can literally feel the workings of my energy to be secure.
Yeah.
But I can feel myself yanked or pulled to creating and behaving in a different emotion, like in a different attachment style. So if you're just reading this like, oh, I'm only this.
Yep.
You're missing it.
Agreed.
Like, because it's important to clock, when do I jump to a different one? And why?
Yeah. I see myself in all of those.
I see you in all of these too.
Secure also, all 4 of them.
Yeah,
like,
I
I
agree.
see all of it.
Well, you'll love to know then that there's one more.
Oh, okay.
And this is the fearful avoidant, otherwise known as disorganized avoidant. Okay. Disorganized avoidant, the term doesn't make sense, but when I explain it to you, I think you'll understand. Like, I think fearful doesn't really make sense. Like, they haven't nailed this term.
Yeah.
This should be the wishy-washy one. It should be called wishy-washy avoidant. Okay. You're a combo of both anxious and avoidant styles. Okay. Crave affection, but also avoid it at all costs. Inconsistent, and you oscillate between styles.
Interesting.
And relate to both.
Nice.
You just experienced an intense fear as a result of childhood trauma at some point. And I know that sounds very dismissive, but listen, intense fear, meaning like some very large event happened and it was a singular childhood trauma.
Right.
And the other parts happened maybe like to cause you to attach differently.
Yep.
This, I think, explains you.
Yeah, I think so.
Because it makes sense, like what we were saying before with like, you have your dad as this solid, secure attachment figure, caregiver. And you have your mother as someone who you lose and who isn't as like solid and consistent. So it makes sense to me that there would be this oscillating for you.
Yeah, like ping-ponging between...
Yeah, between all of the styles. Because you've got the secure. I mean, like, I don't really see you as like the dismissive one.
No.
I see you more as the anxious one, but I can see times where you do the dismissive one.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So I just think it's interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
So here's what I really want you to take from this information, everybody listening.
Watching.
And watching now. is you are not just one.
Right.
I think you have a default. I think for most people, you default into secure or one of the avoidance, one of the insecure ones. Okay. And then in life, because you've healed some of your stuff, or because childhood isn't defined by singular events,
Right.
you are going to pull into the other ones. But the thing is that literally by hearing this, you start healing.
Absolutely.
Literally by identifying it,
Yep.
you start healing.
Yep. You can see it.
Yes. And empathizing with your caregivers for whatever reason is a part of the healing.
Absolutely.
Being angry with them, part of the healing.
Yep.
Like whatever you feel when you hear this information is right.
Yeah.
Whatever you identify in yourself as a parent is right and okay.
And it's all things that you can work on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to say something wild that has no basis. I have no proof to back it up.
Oh, let's hear it.
Not something I usually...
Exciting.
I don't really like to say things that are unresearched.
No, I want to hear it now.
Most intuitive, empathic parents create secure attachments in their kids.
I'll back you up on that.
I have no proof.
Yeah.
But I can just say, especially in the generation that we're in,
Yep.
in the times that we're in,
Yep.
if you care about your child's emotional well-being,
Right.
you're most likely developing a secure attachment style.
Agreed.
So if you're stressing about this as a parent, but you're someone who also listens to the Intuitive Girls Guide, you're probably okay.
Exactly.
It's the people who are like, I don't give a shit about how I parent.
Yeah.
I'm not going to listen to this garbage.
Right.
They're probably the ones that need it even more than you, and that maybe are the ones creating some of the neglect.
Right, because if you're intuitive and you're empathic, or
Yeah.
both,
Yeah.
then you're going to be naturally more dialed in
Yeah.
to the things that would create a secure attachment,
Exactly.
right?
Yes. It makes me think of, I see this on social media now a lot, like shared on Instagram or talked about on TikTok, where it's kind of this like acknowledgement, like, yes, I'm a curse breaker and I was handed a lot of trauma.
Yep.
But it would be unfair of me not to look at my mother or my grandmother or whoever in front of me and see that they also healed a lot of it.
Yep.
I got the
Yep,
stuff
that's
they
true.
couldn't heal.
That's true.
But there's no, they didn't pass me a lot of it.
Yeah, they did some work too.
Yeah. So
Right.
like your parents probably with the tools that they had, I believe they did the best they could.
Absolutely.
Now, if there is abuse present and like all these other elements there
Then-
that it's
then
hard
no.
to swallow that pill,
Right.
then I think there was other factors
Right.
going on.
Right.
Do I think there are many parents in this world who enter into parenting going like, I'm going to really try to fuck this up? No.
No.
I think people do what they have for a capacity, and I wish
With
more
the
people,
skills they have.
Yeah, and I wish
Right.
more people sought growth.
Right.
So maybe you had a parent who didn't,
Yep.
just kept perpetuating a tough cycle for you. I totally acknowledge that.
Yeah, we had cycle breakers.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's important to like look at this from a bit of an objective standpoint so that you can take the information and help heal yourself.
I
That's
agree.
my point.
I agree.
Yeah. And also acknowledge the privilege in being raised in a home with a parent giving you a secure attachment.
Right.
That's
Agreed.
a huge advantage.
Yeah. It is.
It's like I started the race 3 laps ahead.
Yeah.
It's not just like I had the nice shoes.
Because that informs all of the relationships that you enter into.
And the stuff I have to overcome to be able to do the secure things are so much smaller
Right.
than what it is for other people.
Right. That's
So
a good point.
It's just, I think it's helpful as a very empathic person to remember that because it's really hard to like walk around this world and sort of expect yourself and everybody. Well, why aren't you treating me that way? Like I would never treat you like that.
Right.
Or why aren't
Yep.
you like, and when you remember that the starting point
Yep.
and the shit before is different.
Yep.
And that you still have a little bit of privilege that you're blind to in this area.
Yep.
It helps you empathize and feel better. So I'm just saying.
Excellent point.
Let's use this information for that kind of work,
Right.
not
Not just to blame why you
not to
behave
blame
in certain ways.
and not to create your whole personality, like
Right.
to be like I'm an attachment style secure 0.5, like whatever that would mean. Like right, like let's not
Exactly.
do that. Instead.
Right.
Yeah. All right. I need coffee because one of the people that I'm very securely attached to in my life is you, and so I would like to go drink coffee with you.
Same. I'm in.